And so now we're in the second part of the video where we're going to do a quick rundown of some of the other people that were invited to this conference. All right, at Manchester. So we have here Dr. Anselin, and he was talking about his notes about an early African pool of cultures, an early African pool of cultures from which emerged Egyptian civilization. And this was there at Manchester. Let's remember, the researchers of Egyptology go to places like Manchester to do their research. All right? Let's remember that what was said there. And here he talks about how that UNESCO conference they had there at Cairo, 1974, to discuss the links between Egypt and Africa. They were talking about that back then. Again, you had EUROCENTRICS there. They tried to say some stuff. It's been a long time now, and they already decided. You know, they talked about the genetic studies, more advanced, and look who they cite again, Dr. Shamarka. The genetic Sahara affinities of the pre-dynastic Egyptians are now clearly identified. Okay? Thank you very much, guys. Have a good day, Eurocentrics. Bye-bye. Look what it says. That this meeting at Cairo definitively opened the door to new studies, giving Egypt back to the African people. All right? 26, and they say that, you know, they just say that this is all the last evidences of this. All right? Look what they say. Some of the last evidences. All right? How much more clear do you need to get? So we got to move on. After recalling that the formation of the Egyptian civilization originated in the Gatto cultures and its expansion to the original ones of the Delta, which traded with their Asiatic neighbors, the author considers the links of the Gatto culture to its African hinterland. Indeed, since the 80s, archaeologists have excavated in the Saharo-Nubian era a web of African cultures, a web of black cultures that could provide patterns and features to what? The first kingships of Upper Egypt. And remember what Gatto said, that that whole cultural tradition in Upper Egypt was a Nubian tradition. Remember, she said that explicitly, okay? And so, like this guy says, these archaeological data outline a new map of the formation of ancient Egypt. Tazian and Badarian Valley sites were not the centers of pre-dynastic cultures. Let's remember that. They were peripheral provinces of a network of earlier cultures. It's like I said before, those areas up there were the peripheral of the Nubians. You see? And so what you have is a network of earlier cultures, just like in that map that I showed you earlier, where Badarians, Saharans, Nubian, and Nilotic peoples regularly circulated, right? Back and forth. And Naphtali could be one of the ceremonial high circles, of course. And so, again, even he says, from the 4th millennium BC, these populations were pushed out of the eastern Sahara. Some went to the south, some stayed in the oasis, others moved toward the Nile. Just like the maps have showed you, all right? Some went south, some stayed, and some went towards the Nile. But this was all the same population. Now it all comes together. You see how it goes hand in hand, everybody? And right here, you see this is the British Museum studies right here. Burial practices of the final Neolithic pastoralists at Gebel Ramla. You see, this is the very last line where they say, this goes hand in hand with what this guy's saying, that these communities were almost the last dwellers of the dying savanna, and the drought soon forced them to migrate toward the Nile Valley, where they undoubtedly brought their culture, organizational system, and beliefs, contributing to the birth of ancient Egyptian civilization. So now you can see, again, how much more clear does this need to be for you guys to give up this white dream? You guys are telling us to live in a fantasy when I'm breaking this down to you as if this is kindergarten homework, okay? This is like a math problem where you got to show your work. I've showed you the work in very neat handwriting, people. All right? So you look at this map right here, and again, I animate it, and you see back and forth, okay? And so when we look right here, we see what these populations are doing. So we now know that these people living to the west were the same population that some of these people went to the North Sudan. Some of these people went to the Nubian area of the valley, and some of them went up to the Egyptian area. Now it becomes a little bit more clear to you, okay? And then right here we see that they were mapping the stars. Long time ago, they were mapping the stars, all right? Look what that says, 5820 BC, all right? So there is no more making a joke that African people were the original scientists and all this other stuff. It turned out to be absolutely true. This was determined by the highest levels of science. And it's no longer a joke anymore. This is something that you're just going to have to accept, you guys. You can't sit up here hating all the time, all right? But you will, and that's too bad, you know? Because like I said, you guys are just jealous. But we got to move on. All right, and so this guy, he was talking about how a Chadic connection is detectable in the glottogenesis of the Egyptian language. And if you look at this paper, Afro-Asiatic Migrations, Linguistic Evidence, it says right here, there's an identifiable Nile-Saharan influence in Egyptian and Berber. All right, and there's also Chadic influences in Niger-Congo from the south. So that goes hand in hand with what was said at Manchester. Okay, where this guy says that a Chadic connection is detectable in the Egyptian language, all right? That could be located in where? Upper Egypt. Now, this website right here, this is a black website, Face to Face Africa, and this guy, he's a part of the, he's from the Sahara people over there in Chad. He was talking about his people, and he was saying that the Sahara designation appears to have been derived from Arabic, meaning the sons of Ra. Yes, these people live in Central Africa and they are the sons of Ra. What Europeans can ever call themselves the sons of Ra? Show me the white man that calls himself the son of Ra. Exactly. The Sahara lived in the northeast along the Nile River before they sought refuge in the south against the Arabs. So here they lived in the Nile Valley until the Arabs harassed them out of the Nile Valley. Okay? And these are the sons of Ra, okay? And here I make sure I have pictures of these people to show you, okay? Because we got to make this real to these Eurocentrics. Because you guys try to say that these people are white. There's nothing white about these people. That's why right there in the right-hand corner, I make sure I put that quote from this man, where he says, we must keep the integrity of our history intact. I feel the need to make this declaration to those in the media and at major networks who keep perpetuating lies about the most beautiful and sacred thing this world has to offer, our history. Thank you. All right, over there on the left side is the picture of the author with his brother and his father. All right, this guy's literally of the Sahara people. Here we have our Sahara sisters, okay? They gave birth to sons of Ra, okay? These are those people right there. So, getting back to that, because, you know, we're talking about the Chadic connection in the Egyptian language, or earlier in the Sahara. And here he talks about a long coexistence of the ancestors of Egyptians, Chadic people, and Nile Saharans. Again, the Europeans are missing from the equation. You guys are simply irrelevant to the story, okay? And not only that, you guys were worried about what you were doing over there, moving into Europe from Asia. That's what you guys were worried about then. You weren't worried about hanging out with the Chadic people, okay? And even if you had some so-called Caucasian people over there, they were completely absorbed into the population and were irrelevant to this overall story. I'm not just saying that, I'm demonstrating that, okay? We got to move on. On the other hand, consistent Nilotic religious and political patterns are detectable in the formation of the first Egyptian kingship. So here we see demonstrated again, along with 3 other studies, that there are consistent Nilotic religious and political patterns in the formation of the first Egyptian kingships. Remember, Abydos, Heracleopolis, Nagata, Nilotic cities, Nilotic kings, Nubians were the first kings of these areas. This is now determined, you guys, and that's why I say you guys got to get over this stuff. We can't keep rehashing this anymore. All right, and so he says, you know, with the language, and then with the Nilotic religious and political patterns and the formation of the first Egyptian kings, all this suggests a progressive pooling of various religious and cultural models through conflicts, alliances, and integrations. All right, and that goes hand in hand with what Miss Gatto was saying, that you have these areas, and then you start getting a sort of like a soup, you know what I'm saying, that gives birth to Egypt. Now you see, it wasn't, everyone wants to say, oh, we were there too. Oh yeah, we helped create Egypt too. You see that it was entirely different African cultures that gave birth to the origination of this. Now you guys see, okay? There wasn't a bunch of Germans hanging out there with these people. It wasn't a bunch of Chinese people that came to. You guys want the Russians to be there. You guys want Scandinavian people and Italian people, and everybody just comes together to make a world empire called Egypt. No, it did not work like that. It was the Nile Valley Africans, all right? So we got to move on. Here we have Dr. Sakana there at Manchester that day. The Nubian Kemetic culture complex. From when? 7000 BC. All right, he just talks about how you guys are bringing Egyptology down by being mysterious and labeling things Caucasian, which is a generic term for Europeans trying to piggyback on Arabs, when that whole thing is backwards anyway. But he's talking about how grounded scholars, in view of clearly conclusive evidence, bypass or consciously ignore what they're seeing. And Super Egyptian and Phoenician number 7 are not even grounded scholars. And they sit up here and talk about white people with tans and all type of weird stuff. We know what they say. They will consciously ignore and look. They will look straight at Akhenaten and say he's a white man, or they'll look at Amenhotep and say, oh, that's a white guy. You guys are a bunch of freaks. You know that? Like the guy says right here. And again, this whole conference it puts Eurocentrics on notice. These are people that are pulling rank on Eurocentrics now, telling you that you're bringing down Egyptology and you're disrespecting the legacy of Egypt by making these videos, running around, putting these stupid little recreations on Discovery Channel. It's all very childish and insecure, just because you're missing from the scene of something that is just so great. That's too bad, freaks. You got to get over it. So anyway, he said an excellent example is the obvious Africanness of Akhenaten, whose appearance has been variously described as a product of a peculiar, perhaps mysterious disease. And basically, because he looks too damn Negroid for them, so-called Negro, they say, oh, he must have had a disease. No, the only disease here is your hating. That's all that is, and your jealousy. That he deliberately had himself painted with an ugly face. This is some of the finest Egyptian art in Egyptian history. And you guys, this is how you spit on ancient Kemet. You sit up here, talk about people had a disease. You talk about he had an ugly face. You know what I'm saying? You guys just disrespect and shit on ancient Egyptians. This is why I've been sent here to punish you. And look at the stuff you guys come up with, that the carving or incising instruments may have been blunted. Wow. There's nothing more I can even say about that part. Liberated Europeans could describe Kemetic culture with inebriated platitudes. Like when Phoenician number 7 says they were Caucasian point blank. Science has established that. Remember that? But would always place the Mesopotamian civilization as not only a predecessor to, but a shaping influence upon ancient Kemet, which we all know now is a direct lie. And later on, I will be demonstrating that too, just to add just a little bit more, just to run up the score on these Eurocentrics. Okay? So, like it says here, only when impregnated by European or Middle Eastern culture, and to say European, that's a joke. Okay? You guys weren't even close to the level of the Nile Valley Africans. Talking about only then does it come into being. Again, all that is born from Petrie, who himself was a joke. Alright? However, in the area of ceramic industries, all located where? In the furthest south. In pre-colonized Nubia, Tasseti, the land of the bow, the evidence and chronology sustain the assertion of Nubia's influencing precedence and inspiration. And since Phoenician number 7 wants to talk about science has established this, she blinded me with science? Let me tell you something, Phoenician number 7. Look at your screen right now and read that. The field of pure science says the Nubian horizon stands out clearly as the paradigm upon which Kemet evolved. You have been slapped in the face, thoroughly shut down completely, okay? Every single black person you ever disrespected is officially laughing in your face and walking right by you as you sit on the floor and ask for change in your hoodie, okay? Just like Radio 1 showed on his video about you, okay? Let's see what these Nubians were doing from the 7th millennium BC. The cult of the cattle, incised drawings on rocks, megalithic structures, mapping Orion, the galactic center, the anti-galactic center, processional equinoxes, measurements of distances from the Earth to the stars and star masses. Looks like they didn't need any European help. As a matter of fact, where were you guys anyway? Oh, that's right. You were still somewhere in Central Asia, thousands of years away from your little Kurgan invasion that you call it. As a matter of fact, you guys were thousands of years from even learning how to talk. You were still thousands of years away from your Proto-Indo-European language diversifying. That is a scientific fact. Okay? Have a seat. That's why I said you guys can't say nothing to us, man. It's like you guys can't say absolutely a damn thing. You guys look like a bunch of cartoons trying to talk to us. And so look what he says right there. Some of these things I just read to you would several thousand years later be erected at where? Giza. On an ancient foundation. Yeah, you see that Orion constellation right there? Read about now to play in the pyramids over there, okay? Have a good day, Eurocentrics. Bye-bye. With the famous tri-pyramids and their astronomical coordinates. Let's remember, man, you see how they're saying exclusively that Nubia gave birth to ancient Egypt, and they've demonstrated it in so many ways that you simply cannot deny it anymore. This conversation is over, Eurocentrics. I'm running up the score right now, okay? Look at that. Pictographic, petroglyphic, and other forms of writing iridescently illuminate the role of Nubia in the shaping of nascent Egyptian state. Whew. This paper, therefore, compares and contests material evidences of an African-inspired civilization. And look what it says. Super Egyptian, this is for you. Against the traditional predictability of European resistance to African racial identity. You know, how you guys have the nerve to dictate African identities to people. Like, first of all, you were just born yesterday. So how are you going to sit up here and dictate anything to me or to anybody else? That's why I say, Phoenician number 7, you're a joke. That's why I say, Super Egyptian, your scholarship is not on my level, man. Look at how I just completely just shit on you, spit on you, shut you down. Just remember, the Orion. Every time you see that constellation Orion, I want you to think of that YouTube channel, Amazing Black People. Freak. Let's move on. Let's talk about what's going on in the history books. We had Dr. Gloria over there at Manchester. She was talking about these college and university textbooks, and she examined about 36 of them in reference to their content, their style, their structure, their imagery, as well as inaccuracies, innuendos, and related issues in their focus on Egypt. And what they're offering now is guidelines for more logically consistent, professional, and academically accurate discussions. We argue that by placing Egypt in its African context, the authors and the editors can address some of the challenges and eliminate most of the prevailing anomalies. That's why people like these Eurocentrics, they want to get on here. They come up with wives' tales. I've heard so much stuff, man, that made absolutely no sense and had absolutely nothing to do with anything. And I said, man, these people need to go to school or something, man. I've even heard stuff from black people that sounds absolutely ridiculous coming to my channel. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we got to get the proper reading material. You feel me? And again, this is just a little bit of a little shot to those Eurocentrics out there and the Eurocentric authors and editors of these books. And again, they're trying to tell you, quit the inaccuracies and the innuendos already. Quit trying to put these little Greek pictures predominantly in your books and start showing some real Egyptian art. That's what they mean. Okay, right here, I got an example of what I'm talking about. The 3 images that you see up there on the top are all from the History Channel, the same program. And you know how they do the reenactments. They'll hire a Mexican or an Arab, have them be an ancient Egyptian. There won't be a single black person in sight. No one will look like anything from the walls absolutely whatsoever. Okay, so here we got these drawings right here. You see those drawings right there on the top, and they put those. See, we now know that the Egyptians made their drawings any type of way that they felt like making them, first of all, okay? And so what they'll do is they'll find something that they can use. It's like she said, inaccuracies and innuendos and imagery, all right? Let's just take the words imagery and innuendos. And here the History Channel, they are so notorious for this, for their imagery is used to evoke innuendos. You know what I'm saying? So what they do is they show stuff, make people think it's white, and then they want to go and put an Arab there. You know, now when you see on the bottom, those are examples of quality Egyptian art that will not be shown on the show. Why? Because it doesn't match up with their generic actors that they hire, and it also looks like straight up black people. You know what I'm saying? They look at that, it looks exactly like black guy right there. You see, shaved his head, you know, and so it doesn't match, you know, the Asiatic that they hire to play this fake Egyptian. It doesn't make any sense. And this is why they're telling you, this is basically what they're telling you. You got to start showing the real Egyptian stuff, man, and stop with the innuendos. I mean, it's all real Egyptian stuff, but they hand select stuff because they're playing to the sentiments of these Eurocentrics who have specialized needs. You know, it's like they're going to burst into tears if they start seeing this stuff on TV. But I say, I don't give a damn, man. We've been subjected to bullshit for 200 years now, and it's about time that we got our due. You feel me? And so we got to move on now. And so what they want, what they're not, and what they don't do is use things in the right context too. Like what Dr. Gloria said here was we argue replacing Egypt in its African context. Here's an example of using imagery and placing it in its African context. Here you see that picture, front of the Discovery Channel. They try to imply some white shit, which in turn tries to use innuendo to imply Europe. That picture has absolutely nothing to do with Europe. But we're just going to take that uraeus right there. You see it circled, right? On top of the deity with the uraeus, okay? Now listen to this. This is from Why Did Taharqa Build His Tomb at Nuri by Timothy Kendall. I've demonstrated above that the Egyptians and Nubians viewed the pinnacle of the pure mountain that you see right there outwardly as a rearing serpent, a phallus, a squatting god, and depending on the direction, a formed crown with a sun disk or a white crown even, maybe even the double crown. All these symbols conveyed potent meaning and gave evidence of the deities that resided in the mountain. Okay, you see the arrow right there. The clear visibility of the white crown at its summit indicated that the pinnacle projected the aspect of kingship. They never tell you that on these TV shows, absolutely whatsoever, that mountain right there is called the throne of the two lands. But that's another video. Okay. So how this ties in to that uraeus and that snake right there, to that uraeus and that sun disk right there, is that's how the Egyptians viewed the pinnacle. As you can see right there, the uraeus is on top. The sun disk is on top of the uraeus right there. I got to make sure I show you the picture, okay? And then we have right here, from the foregoing data, we must recognize that the ancients conceived the pinnacle on Jebel Barkal as a natural statue having many meanings and many divine identities, both male and female. This is confirmed again by a relief on the north wall of the chapel where King Arkamani is shown venerating 4 deities seated atop the mountain. And there you see the Nubian king, Arkamani, right there. He's in front of the 4 deities right there. And you see again that uraeus and that sun disk on top of that deity's head right there, right? Okay, it's the same idea in all these pictures that you see right there. So this right here was from the BBC. And here we have a local Nubian who was exhibiting that for the host. There we see the uraeus. The sun disk goes on top of the head of the uraeus. You see that? And then other times, it would be the white crown of Egypt. You see? And when the Egyptians went over there and started looking at that mountain, that's really when the relationship between the Nubians and Egypt changed too. But that's another video. Now, we can tie all that in to Abu Simbel, right? Directly. Here we see a detail of the south wall, the Great Hall at Abu Simbel, and shows Ramses II, the great Ramses, offering to Amun of Karnak, who is seated inside Jebel Barkal. There you see a circle. There it is. It's the same thing. He's seated. Amun of Karnak is seated inside Jebel Barkal, but this drawing is at Abu Simbel, and the pinnacle appears as a royal uraeus wearing the white crown. Thank you very much. And again, absolutely nothing like this at this level exists anywhere in Arabia or anywhere absolutely in Europe whatsoever. And that's why you guys go crazy and you just wish that you were Egyptians so bad, and why you guys talk to us so violently. But like I said, that's your problem that you guys are a bunch of wannabes. But we got to move on right now. Right here we have Mr. Grantham. He presented Unwrapping Egyptology in 1998. The Education Department of the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, they retrained their volunteers who conducted the tours of their Africa and Ancient Egypt exhibits. And the purpose of the training was to conduct tours of both exhibits and insert into the presentations a connection between Africa and a connection between ancient Egypt. This is at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. So again, here we see, this was a long time ago, 1998 they started doing that. All right? So, Eurocentrics, you guys are so late right now. Anyway, prior to this, they didn't do that. All right? And again, before they did that, he says before they did that, the commonly held misconception that ancient Egypt existed in some mythical place in the East rather than in Africa, was commonly held. And moreover, that same approach, it had no impact on the perception that the ancient Egyptians were white, which is an idea which, again, is so effectively propagated by Hollywood and found generally in school books, again, in the popular media in general, which itself goes hand in hand with what Dr. Ashton said on her blog, Kemet Expert, that in her opinion, it was largely a result of the media and their movies and documentaries and their reconstructions. Sort of like that picture right there, National Geographic, the new face of King Tut, And so it's because they don't want to show Caucasians getting ran over by the Egyptians. They just want to say King Tut has a new face now. That's all they want to do. And again, this is, the Eurocentrics, they're trying to tell you that you guys got to get with the program. You see it right here in your face. You can't deny this anymore. Tell us that we're living in a fantasy. You're the one living in a fantasy. And we see that the History Channel is going to help you do that. You see, here we see not a single Nile Valley African absolutely anywhere. And this program right here dealt with the Old Kingdom. They're hiring Mexicans and Indians who bring absolutely no royal bearing or dignity to ancient Egypt. And this is why I said these Caucasians have done nothing but spit on the legacy of the Nile Valley ancestors, man. You feel me? It's like if black people were to do our own programs like this, we wouldn't disrespect the legacy like this. This is crazy, man. It's like they sit up here and hire Bedouins, Turks, and Mexicans, and then use a bunch of innuendo. And they won't put a single black person anywhere. Why? Because this is all a fantasy created by these people. But here's the thing, though. It doesn't matter even if they make this stuff and put it on TV. Because it's not going to change what really happened. And we already know what really happened now. So this is why they do all that. Because they just want to be Egyptians so bad, but she will never be. All right? So we got to move on. Dr. Bill Manley, Petrie's Revolution. And here we see that Petrie, he was a joke. He was a hater too. All the way back in 1908, he found a burial of a woman who belonged to the Theban royal family, who they believed was a Nubian by birth or descent. And it just sat around, and that, it was the largest group of gold that had left Egypt. Okay, at that time. The largest group of gold that had left Egypt at that time. And it was a royal burial. And it got no interest for decades. Black people, that shows you how much haters they are. So what they did all this time was continue hating on the Nubians. Again, here we go. We got the Nubians coming up again. Due to the attitude of Petrie himself, he acknowledged the value, but he downplayed its historical importance. The same way that they acknowledged the value of ancient Egypt, but downplay its achievements and then try to say it was because of Sumerians how Egypt became so important. No, you're living in another fantasy. This is from the 17th dynasty. It goes hand in hand with what Dr. Shamarka had wrote in his 1990 paper when he said that Sekenenra's entire facial complex fit right into a Nubian's Okay, so here we have the Theban royal family, 17th century dynasty. Here we have this woman, royal woman, who, again, here we have Nubians coming up again. And you guys hate. Even Petrie was hating in 1908. He couldn't stand it. You know what I'm saying? But the truth always comes out at the end. You see? And again, Petrie held on to this whole thing that the Pharaonic Egypt was essentially the product of decisive European interventions. Again, he was living in a complete storybook. And we now know that the cultural eminence of Pharaonic Egypt was born from the Nubians, starting in the early Holocene. Okay? Before there was even such an idea of a white identity. All right? And so it says right here that this whole idea of a black Egypt grew out of a context in which the rhetoric of a white American superiority was based in part of claims of Greco-Roman ancestry. And it is, though. You guys keep telling us how great Greco-Romans are, and that's how you guys are so superior to us because you had this civilization. Then it turns out that ancient Egypt really belonged to the African legacy, and that your precious Greeks and Romans not only showed up thousands of years later, but they went to the feet of these people and learnt their arts and crafts. Their arts and crafts were improved upon and, you know what I'm saying, at the feet of the Egyptians, who they obviously thought were amazing. So the entire time, this white American superiority that they've used to smash on us turned out to be a complete lie the entire time. And while they were doing that, they're pulling King Tut's treasures out and stealing that, you know, and then lying about that. The throne of Egypt has 2 black people on it. King Tut's throne? You feel me? They're like, yeah, we're the Greeks and the Romans. But the Greeks and the Romans, they looked up to ancient Egypt and wished they could get on their level. Let's face it, man. Come on. It's crazy, man. And we just look right here how it just goes so deep. You know, and it sees right here how black people don't want to be blended into the Greco-Roman story. But we see now that it was the tropical African people who served as the prequel to the Greeks and the Romans. This has been established by science. Lesion number 7, don't you ever come to me talking about anything's been established by no damn science. This is why I said I came here to punish these people, and this is the epitome of what I mean when I say I came to punish them. This is why I said that I gotta use high-level scholarship to smack the hell out these people, man, because it's been a long time coming. All right? But anyway, it is only by understanding the threats to 19th century racist thought that were posed by an African Egypt that we can explain ancient Egypt's current profile as a so-called white society. Well, not anymore, only in the minds of Eurocentrics, and its position within the modern American imagination as one of the origins of Western civilization. And that's right. That's why when you see that Washington Monument over there, there's a direct line from that Washington Monument to the Nile Valley. Remember that. The next time you go to Washington, D.C. and you see that thing, okay? When you look, the next time you see Mount Rushmore, remember Abu Simbel. And remember, that is a legacy of the black man, the African, whatever you want to call yourself, guys. Just remember, it's a legacy of the black man has been established now. And we got to say, man, that the satisfaction is complete. Let me tell you that. This is why I say these jokers, you know, I could care less what you're talking about. Anyway, I got to hurry up and move on now. And so, again, this all goes hand in hand, once again, with cultural convergence in the Neolithic of the Nile Valley by David Wengrow, when he said strong correspondences between trajectories of Neolithic cultural development in Middle Egypt and in the vicinity of modern Khartoum far to the south were first pointed out more than a decade ago. And again, this study itself, it comes out of Oxford and University College London, the home of Egyptology. Have a good day. And right here, Dr. Anna, we already talked about what she was talking about. She was talking about, you know, these cattle and stuff, and the assumption of sacred powers around the figure of the leader is necessarily related to the consolidation of powerful chiefdoms. And so Abydos and the Hyrcan Polis, again, are particularly visible. And the chief, from now on, will be the one having the legitimacy to kill, as seen in some other African societies. And that's where we get the... You can catch this video in part 3, where we'll be continuing this discussion. But this is going to be another idea. This is going to be, I'm going to be showing decisively, completely, and thoroughly, finally, that not only did the Nile Valley Africans establish their kings before the Asiatics did in Sumeria, but the Sumerians were not more advanced than the Egyptians at that time. And so I highly suggest you check that video out. Until next time.